Good morning, and it's good to be with you again as we go into week 2 of our sermon series looking at a couple of disciples. We spoke about Phoebe last week, doing good to others. Today we're looking at Timothy, and so let's see what Timothy has got to say to us about being a disciple today. What can we learn from so long ago that may be helpful now? There's a phrase that's been on so many people's lips in the recent weeks as we watch the news, the wars that will not end, the violence that keeps returning, the conflicts that go on and on while diplomats talk and people suffer. And it's hard not to feel a deep and weary recognition. We've been here before. The name changes, the weapons change, the borders shift, but the story is the same. History seems determined to repeat itself. And underneath every headline are human beings, frightened, grieving, displaced, wondering if anyone is coming to help. And perhaps some of us sitting here today feel something of that weariness ourselves. Not just about the world, but about our own lives. The same struggles returning, the same doubts circling back, the same quiet questions. Does any of this make a difference? Does my faith still mean anything? Has the flame, if I'm honest, grown a little low? Here's the thing. Timothy knew that feeling. He was leading a church in Ephesus, one of the most cosmopolitan and morally chaotic cities in the ancient world. His mentor Paul was in prison. The community around him was fractured and there was loads of false teaching. The empire was hostile. And Timothy, by all accounts, a gentle, sometimes anxious soul, was trying to hold it all together. And it's into that situation that Paul writes him a letter. And at the heart of it is a single powerful idea. Fan into flame the gift of God that is in you. Not, Timothy, start again from scratch, not pretend the flame is not dimmed, not perform a faith you do not feel, but fan the flame that is already there. Who was Timothy? Timothy appears for the first time in Acts chapter 16, when Paul arrives in Lystra on his second mission journey. He's already a disciple, already well spoken of by the believers in the area. Something about him catches Paul's attention immediately, and Paul asks him to join the mission. His background is fascinating. His mother Eunice was Jewish, his father Greek, which made him something of a bridge between the two worlds, someone who had grown up navigating different cultures and different expectations. The capacity for cultural sensitivity and relational attentiveness would serve him well throughout his ministry. But what Paul notices most is not Timothy's background or his gifts, it's his faith, and specifically the quality of that faith. Paul uses a Greek word that is fascinating. Anapokritos. It means a faith that is unfeigned, genuine, without hypocrisy, deeply sincere. And Paul is saying there is nothing performative about Timothy's faith. It's real and it goes all the way down. What you see on the outside is actually happening on the inside. In a world saturated with performance and image management, in Paul's day, as much as in ours, that kind of faith stands up like a light in a dark room. And it's interesting, because the second thing that I notice about Timothy is that his faith is a generational faith. And we can ask the question, where does this come from? And Paul's answer is striking. He traces it back through the generations. He says, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. 3 generations, grandmother, mother, son. A thread of faith passed down, not through formal instruction alone, but through lived example, through watching someone pray, through seeing someone trust God in difficulty, through observing what a life shaped by faith actually looks like from the inside. Lois and Eunice are mentioned only here in all of Scripture, 2 verses, 2 names. And yet Paul says, in effect, Timothy's faith is what it is because of who they were. I want to pause on that for a moment because I think it matters enormously for us. Some of you in the congregation this morning may have been praying for children or grandchildren for years. You have wondered whether it makes any difference. You have watched them drift away from faith or struggle to find their footing or simply seem indifferent to everything you hold most dear. You know, Lois and Eunice did not live to see Paul's letter. They did not know their faith would be cited in a document that would be read by millions of people across 2,000 years. They simply lived faithfully, loved their family, and trusted God with the rest. The faith you carry is not only for you. It is a seed that you are planting in soil you may never see bear fruit. But the seed is real, and God wastes nothing. And Paul calls out to Timothy to fan this faith into flame. I guess this is the moment I want to stay with the longest, because I think it is the pastoral heart of this passage. Paul says to Timothy, these are his words, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God. The image he's using is of a fire that has not gone out, but has burned down to embers, not extinguished, not cold, but low, quiet, in need of attention. He does not tell Timothy to go start a new fire. He tells him just to tend the one he has. And there is something profoundly pastoral in that distinction, because I think many of us, if we're honest, know what it is to have a faith that is kind of cooled right down. Life does that. Loss does that. Disappointment does that. The relentless ordinariness of getting through each day does that. The news does that. And when the flame is low, the temptation is to think it has gone out altogether. The faith that was something for a different season, a younger self, a more certain time. But Paul says no. The gift of God is still there. The Spirit has not left you. The flame might be low, but the flame is not out. Fan it. I guess raises the question, how? Paul gives us the answer in the very next verse. God did not give you a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and self-discipline. Power. Not our own power, but the power of the Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead and who lives in us. Love. The willingness to keep showing up for people, to keep caring, to keep giving, even when it's costly. Self-discipline. The quiet, daily habits that keep the flame alive. Prayer, reading scripture, coming to worship, being in community. The flame is fanned not by dramatic moments alone, but by daily faithfulness, by choosing again and again to show up. Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a well-known name. This is a man whose story I want to bring alongside Timothy's, because I think they illuminate each other. Just to remind you, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor and a theologian who lived throughout the rise of the Third Reich. He could have left Germany, and he had every opportunity to do so. He was, in fact, offered a safe position in New York in 1939, and he took it. But within weeks, he had boarded a ship back to Germany. Writing to his friend Reinhold Niebuhr, I've made a mistake in coming to America. I must live through this difficult period in our national history with the Christian people of Germany. I have no right to participate in the reconstruction of Christian life in Germany after the war if I do not share the trials of this time with my people. He went back. He lived the faith he preached. He joined the resistance. He was arrested in 1943 and sadly executed in April 1945. In fact, just days before the Allied liberation of his prison camp. In his writings from prison, Bonhoeffer returns again and again to the same theme. That faith is not primarily a set of beliefs to be held, but a life to be lived. That Christianity is not a religion of inwardness, but of costly, embodied presence in the world. He writes these words: the church is not just to bandage the victims under the wheel, but to put a spoke in the wheel itself. It's not the language of a man whose flame has gone out. That's the language of someone who has fanned it in the darkest of circumstances into a fierce and costly fire. Timothy's temptation may have been to shrink back because of opposition and discouragement or even fear. Bonhoeffer faced the same temptation on a much larger stage. America offered safety, influence, and a promising academic future. Germany offered danger, uncertainty, and suffering. Yet he concluded that discipleship required presence rather than escape. I think I want to bring this closer to home, to us as a congregation, to the people of our community, even this week. Last week we learned from Phoebe that even the small things make a difference. That what feels insignificant in God's hands is valid and vital contribution to the work of the kingdom. That truth carried many of you out of here last Sunday with something rekindled. I think this week Timothy takes it deeper, because it's not only what we do that matters, it is who we are when we do it. Paul says of Timothy, I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for your welfare. For everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know that Timothy has proved himself, because as a son with a father who has served me in the work of the gospel. Not Timothy the brilliant orator, not Timothy the strategic thinker, but Timothy the trustworthy one, the genuine one. Timothy the one who, when he walks into a room, people know that what you see is what you get. We live in a world drowning in performance, in curated images and carefully managed impressions, in politicians who say one thing and do another, in a media landscape where it is almost impossible to know what is true. The most counter-cultural thing a follower of Jesus can offer the world is simply this: to be real. To be the person whose faith is the same on a Monday morning as it is on a Sunday. To be the person who is kind when there is nothing to gain from kindness. To be the person who tells the truth even when a comfortable lie would be easier. To be the person who prays not to be seen praying, but because they actually believe someone is listening. That's anupokritos faith. Sincere, unfeigned, real. And that is the most powerful witness you can offer a watching world. I said right at the beginning that history seems determined to repeat itself. That the same violence keeps returning, the same cruelties, the same failure to find another way. And that's true, and it's heartbreaking. But here is another thing that keeps repeating itself across history. And this is the thing I want you to hold on for this week. Ordinary people living with sincere faith in ordinary places change things. Not always dramatically, not always visibly, but they do. A grandmother in Leicester prays faithfully and loves her family well, and a movement is shaped. A young man in Ephesus holds firm under pressure, and letters are written that still speak 2,000 years later. A pastor in Berlin goes back when he could have stayed away, and a generation learns what it looks like to choose conscience over comfort. The world is struggling more than we sometimes realize. People around us are lonely, uncertain, frightened. They're looking for something real. They are tired of performance and pretense. They are hungry, even if they cannot name the hunger, for something that goes all the way down. You can offer that, not by being perfect, not by having all the answers, but by simply being genuine, by letting your faith be visible in the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you treat people, the way you keep showing up. That's your witness. That's your gift to the world. Before we close, I want to ask you a direct question. Where does your faith need to be fanned into flame today? This week, with the life you actually have, in the circumstances you are actually in. Perhaps it's a relationship that needs the investment of genuine care. Perhaps it's a habit of prayer that has quietly slipped away. Perhaps it's a conversation that you've been avoiding with God or with another person because you're not sure you're ready for where it might lead. The gift of God is still in you. The Spirit has not left. The flame may be low perhaps, but it is not out. Fan it. Not because the world deserves it, though it does. Not because the church needs you, though it does. But because you're loved by God, who has never stopped believing in you. Because you belong to a community that needs the real, genuine, unfeigned you. Not a performance, presence. Because your life has meaning that extends far beyond what you can see. And because the world, this broken, beautiful, war-weary world, is changed one sincere life at a time. Timothy held firm. Bonifer went back. What are you going to do this week? God bless. Amen.